Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We were talking about the 7 facts that I think every single woman needs to know about men. The fifth fact, for a man, romance is all about sex. That's just the fact of the matter. Men will do romance, and the only reason they will do it is because they want it to lead to sex. For them, romance and sex go hand in hand. They just don't get the importance of just giving gifts, giving chocolates, giving flowers, unless it's going to be linked to the sexual reward after that. And therefore, there is a perception, and it's relatively true, that men are a little bit unromantic. They're inherently unromantic. They're awkward about romance. However, when men are surveyed about romance, an extremely large percentage of them respond that they would like to be romantic. Well then, if they want to be romantic, why are they so clueless about how to be romantic? Well, as a man, let me tell you honestly how we feel. And of course, what I'm about to tell you is found in many simple self-help books and psychological guides, so it's not just coming from me. The number one reason men will not be romantic is because they fear that their efforts will be rejected, mocked, ridiculed, or discarded. In other words, men feel insecure about how successful their romantic attempts are going to be. So therefore, women need to be extra sensitive about how they interpret and how they receive his romance. For example, suppose a husband tries to plan a romantic evening, and he goes to a restaurant, or he does this or he does that. A wife needs to realize, if she criticizes the food at the restaurant, the man will interpret this as he hasn't done his job. Now, even though for the woman's perspective, she might have had the best time in the world. She might have enjoyed the fact that he took her out. She's happy her husband spent time. But when she found a flaw with his plan, which was this restaurant, or suppose they went out to a movie, and she goes, what a boring movie. So then what you're basically implying, even though you don't imply this, but the husband interprets it, that you made the wrong choice in choosing this movie. Suppose he gives her a gift that she doesn't really need, or she doesn't like, or she's flustered and embarrassed by. And so she says, oh, why did you give me this? You shouldn't have. Why'd you spend so much money and this and that? Now, she might be flustered. She might be awkward or embarrassed, or maybe genuinely she would have liked another gift. But the point is, the man will interpret as if he failed. And therefore, even if something goes wrong outside of his control, he will feel he was the one who let him down. Now, the point here is that a woman needs to realize that when a man shows her some romance, the intention, the goal behind it is so that she literally melts in his arms. She thanks him, she kisses him, and eventually, yes, it is linked to sex at night. That's exactly why a man would want to do that. Now, another reason why romance is awkward is that the definitions of romance might be different for men and women. For many women, snuggling up on the sofa in front of the TV after a candlelight dinner is the main definition of romance. For a man, it might be taking his wife out on a drive, or doing something that he likes to do. It's a very different understanding of what romance is. Now, this problem is a little bit easier to solve, and that is that each couple needs to communicate what exactly they'd like to do together. Now, another problem is that if romance does not lead to sex, once again, the man feels a little bit let down. Well, frankly, he feels very let down. And again, I'm just being blunt here so that our sisters understand. By now, after all of these hours of lectures, surely we understand that men are sexual creatures. And romance is supposed to be rewarded with intimacy. And all you need to do is look at Western culture. Why do men wine and dine a girl? Well, because they want to sleep with her. Why do men go out on dates and spend money? Well, because they want to basically get her to their apartment. This is the reality of Western culture, and that is in the fitrah. And therefore, when a husband does something for his wife, it is the biggest mistake for the wife to criticize that as somehow being inadequate. Sisters, realize, as I said before, men have fragile egos, very fragile. So when he brings you a gift, jump for joy, kiss him, hug him, reward him at night. Even if you didn't particularly like that gift, the fact is, by you saying no or by you criticizing, you have effectively killed romance, and any other attempts are going to be stopped by him. Realize that one negative comment might mean the absence of 2 or 3 years of romance. So that's the 5th point. The 6th point that I want to make. The 6th point is beauty is the attempt to be beautiful. What do I mean by this? Women, I'm going to be very frank here again. Husbands really don't care if their wives' behinds are a little bit bigger than when they got married. But they do care that the wife is attempting to look good. She's wearing perfume, she's wearing makeup, she's looking good. Husbands don't compare their wives to supermodels. They really don't. Husbands are happy with their wives, but they are very irritated and hurt if their wives don't care about their own looks. Sisters, let me tell you, frankly, one of the biggest complaints that I hear from husbands, and one that I also recognize, is that wives seem to spend hours getting ready for a sister's event, for their friends, for going out to a party, for going out to a wedding invitation. But they can't even spend 5 minutes of the day before their husbands come home to make themselves look better. And this is one of the biggest complaints that husbands have, that they don't make the extra effort to want to look beautiful in front of their husbands. And my dear sisters in Islam, the one person in the world who deserves your beauty, who's really supposed to see you completely decked out, is not your girlfriends, it's not the friends at the wedding party, it's your husband. And if you're not going to get ready for him, well then why are you spending time to get ready for anybody else? Women, by and large, don't understand the significance of looking good in front of their husbands. And they actually believe that they have to compete with the images of supermodels. Now it is true, I mentioned in a previous point, that the husbands are bombarded with these images. But let me tell you, as a man, a husband can decompartmentalize. He knows that these images are fake, or he knows that these are of supermodels. He's not comparing his wife's body to that of all of these supermodels. What he wants is his wife to attempt to look good, to put on some makeup, to dress nicely, to comb her hair, to be perfumed. And one of the biggest problems comes that a woman is very insecure about how she looks. And here is where the good news comes, that when a woman attempts to look good, when a woman takes time out, even if it's 5 minutes of her day, to comb her hair, to dress up, to put on some perfume, the husband sees that she cares about her appearance, that she's wanting to look beautiful. In one survey that I read, almost 85% of husbands surveyed said that what mattered was not that their wives looked 10 or 20 years younger, but that they showed they cared enough about their husband's feelings that they attempted to look good. Sisters, frankly, you are overly sensitive about how you look. You're overly critical. Your husband is nowhere near as critical of you as you are. Now, to an extent, it's a little bit healthy to be critical of your own looks, but it is true to say that for most men, what they want to see is their wives attempting to look beautiful, is their wives dressing up. The fact that they attempted to dress up makes them dressed up. The fact that they attempted to be beautiful makes them beautiful. And this is one of the most important and simple points that every single woman needs to realize. This leads us to the 7th and final point. I call it cave time. What do I mean by this? Sisters, wives, realize it is in the nature of men that they need some alone time. They need to be cut off from everything. They need to whether it's reading the newspaper or browsing online or reading the news or listening, they need some alone time. It is in the nature of men that when they have a big problem, they don't tell other people. They sit down and they think about it. Or they'll think of other problems and let that work in the back of their mind. So for example, it's very common, men have a big problem, they're going to come home and listen to the world news. It's very depressing, a lot of things happening. You're looking at far bigger problems, and listening to these bigger problems actually helps a man cope with his own problems. Sisters, realize every single husband needs some alone time. It's called cave time. He wants to go into his cave, cut off from everything else around him. So when your husband wants that alone time, wants that cave time, let him go into that cave, but have some time. He needs to realize, of course, he needs to come out as well. Of course, one of the problems is that husbands, when they come out of the cave time, they just want to go to sleep and don't want to spend any family time. Definitely, that's the other extreme. But do realize, men are not as social as women. Men are not as open about their feelings as women. It is a part of being a man to go brood, to go contemplate, to go sit in a quiet corner, and that quiet corner could be in front of the television, it could be in front of the computer, it could be in front of a magazine or book. And therefore, if you have something really important to talk about and you find your husband in his cave, well then, tell him, honey, when are you going to be finished so that we can talk? Now, of course, I mentioned before, husbands need to be fair as well, that if they say 7:30 or 9 o'clock, they better live up to their adjustments and their promises as well. But wives, realize that husbands, every man needs some time alone. When a man walks away from an argument, when a man goes into his room and the wife is having an argument with him, let's say, that doesn't mean he doesn't care. That's his cave time. You need to understand, for a man, a big problem is solved by quiet space, by thinking it through. This is the way he does it. Whereas for a woman, a big problem is solved by talking about it, by talking with her friends, by repeating the same thing over and over again. And a man doesn't solve things this way. Simply understanding this basic fact of male psychology will help going a long way in giving him some free space and allowing him to be who he is. And of course, no doubt, when we talk about the men, we'll say, men as well need to understand that this cave time cannot eat up their family time. There's a time for this and a time for that. These are the 7 primary points that I want every single Muslimah to know about men, so that inshaAllah ta'ala it will help them in their relationships. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.